Starting this broadcast with the latest coming in from the Ukraine-Russia war. Ukraine has claimed that it used an American-made bomb against the Russian forces during its ongoing offensive in Kursk. Ukraine's Air Force released a footage claiming it used US-made high-precision GBU-38 bombs to target a Russian platoon command post. Several allies of Ukraine, including the United States and UK, have been supplying both offensive and defensive weapons to its forces. And these weapons come with certain restrictions on how and when they could be used to hit targets inside Russian territory. This highlights a major concern of the allied countries for possible retaliation from Russia, which can draw NATO countries into the conflict. Ukraine also claimed to have sunk a Russian ferry carrying fuel tanks in an aerial attack on the southern Russian port of Kavkaz. The Ukrainian claim was later confirmed by Russian officials, including the governor of the region. The officials, however, did not specify the weapon used in the attack. Ukraine in recent weeks has targeted various Russian road and rail bridges with aerial attacks in Crimea that connect to the Russian mainland. Meanwhile, a Russian drone attack on Thursday killed 2 civilians and wounded a third in Ukraine's Sumy region, located on the border with Russia. This was claimed by Ukrainian authorities. Now, the President Volodymyr Zelensky in his latest speech has shed light on the reasoning behind the Kursk incursion. Speaking at an event in Kiev, Zelensky said that the push inside Kursk is supposed to help end the war under the conditions of an independent Ukraine. He said that Ukraine's incursion was part of a systemic effort to end the 30-month-old war on Kiev's terms.
Our defensive operations in Donetsk region, Kharkiv region, in the south of Ukraine, our liberation from Russia's Black Sea Fleet, our operation in the Kursk region, and our almost daily strikes on Russian military targets, they are all our systematic efforts in defending Ukraine, and our effort to end the war under the conditions of an independent Ukraine.
And to take this further, we are now being joined by Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, current NATO senior mentor for logistics and distinguished fellow with the Globsec from Germany. General, thank you so much for joining us here on WION. Good to see you.
Thank you for the privilege.
Let me start by asking you this. Was the West in the know about Ukraine's Kursk operation inside Russia?
Certainly, as far as I can tell, we were not. I imagine that there were probably at some level some intelligence officers, maybe somewhere that were informed. But I think Ukraine correctly protected the information about this counteroffensive that they were planning for Kursk in order to maintain surprise. And I think they learned in the past, if they told too much to the United States or to UK, it would eventually get out. So I think they did a very good job of protecting information this time.
Right. General, Ukraine has been using Western weapons supplied by mainly the United States and, of course, other European countries as well. But that was inside of Ukraine when Russia had attacked. Now Ukraine is using Western weapons inside of Russia. So I want to ask you, is there a red line?
It's only a red line to us. I mean, we have been putting red lines in front of ourselves and deterring ourselves from the very beginning, unfortunately, out of an excessive, unreasonable fear that Russia might somehow escalate and use a nuclear weapon. The Ukrainians are proving once again that all of these red lines are self-imposed and that Russia is not going to use a nuclear weapon in response, because there's no benefit to Russia if they use a nuclear weapon. I think that we should think about these weapons. Earlier you used the phrase offensive weapons or defensive weapons. There is no weapon out there that is only for offense or defense. There's no switch on the device or on the bomb or whatever that says for defensive purposes only. So it's how they are employed. And in this case, this counteroffensive that Ukraine has launched in the direction of Kursk is, in its end state, is entirely defensive, because they're trying to create a buffer zone from which Russia can no longer attack innocent Ukrainian civilians. And so that means using whatever weapons they have in order to clear that area out, hit Russian airfields that are the source of Russian attacks against innocent Ukrainian civilians. Now, the United States has, unfortunately, kept a restriction on Ukraine's ability to use the 300-kilometer range ATACMS rocket. So those cannot be used inside Russia, unfortunately. And I think UK has also prohibited Ukraine from using Storm Shadow inside Russia. But otherwise, they should be able to use anything we have provided, however they need to use it.
Right, General, you keep calling Ukraine's operation as counterattack. You don't see that as an invasion of Russia?
No, this is in doctrinal terms, you would call it a counteroffensive, because everything that they're trying to do is to counter what Russia has been doing now for, actually this war started over 10 years ago in 2014, but the large-scale invasion started 2.5 years ago. So when you look at the effects that Ukraine is trying to achieve with this counteroffensive, it is to, number one, clear out the Russians' ability to attack Ukraine, excuse me, from the Kursk area. Number two, they're attempting to draw off Russian forces that are attacking them in the east. Number three, they are attempting to destroy Russian oil and gas infrastructure, which is what pays for the money that Russia makes from selling oil and gas to India and to China, is what pays for their war against Ukraine. And then, of course, they're trying to change the narrative about the inevitability of Russian victory. And I think this counteroffensive is achieving that as well.
All right, General, whenever, in layman terms at least, whenever one thinks about a nuclear war, they usually think either of the party using a nuclear weapon. But there are two nuclear plants in Kursk and Zaporizhzhia. What happens if either of the ones come under attack?
Well, of course, the Russians control both of these nuclear power plants that you're talking about. The Russians have occupied Zaporizhzhia since the beginning of their large-scale invasion back in February of 2022. They've been careless. I think that they have...
But General, just to intervene a little, Russia just today has said that Ukraine is trying to attack the nuclear plant in Kursk. So how do you respond to that?
Yeah, of course, first of all, I don't believe anything that comes out of the Kremlin, but of course, the Ukrainians are threatening, they're approaching that nuclear power plant. And what that will do, if they do capture it, that will significantly affect electricity, power generation in a large part of Russia. It could, in fact, affect Moscow. Of course, what Russia has been doing now for over 2 years is going after the power grid inside Ukraine. So this would be an opportunity for Ukraine to put that same sort of pressure on the Russian side. But they are not going to attack the nuclear power plant itself, leading to some sort of a nuclear accident. But if they can prevent Russia from being able to generate electricity from there, then the Russians will feel a little bit of what Ukraine has been experiencing. And maybe that could lead to a situation where Russia agrees to withdraw from Zaporizhzhia if Ukraine agrees to withdraw from the other power plant.
Right, General, that's exactly what I want to come to.
Excuse me, let me finish, please. So we don't know the intention. The Ukrainians are not advertising their intentions, and I'm not entitled to know. So, but this is only a possibility. Okay.
All right, General, that's exactly what I wanted to come at, because Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has just talked about the Kursk operation, and he's saying that he basically wants to end the war on Kiev's terms. I want to ask you, do you think this Kursk operation, or as counter-attack as you call it, will be enough to do that?
By itself, no. But what it does do is start to create conditions that will force Russia to have to negotiate from a different position. When he says end the war on Kiev's terms, of course, this is what every democratic country should be hoping for, including India, that on Kiev's terms means that the sovereignty of Ukraine is respected and that Russia returns back to the 1991 borders. That's what he means by Kiev's terms. And I would think that a democratic country like India would also want to see this war ended on those kinds of terms. What Russia, of course, wants is to retain control over some of the sovereign territory of Ukraine, prevent Ukraine from ever fully maturing as a liberal democratic country. So that's what we all democratic countries, including India, should be supporting.
All right, General, thank you so much for joining us here on WION and getting us your insights.
Thank you very much for the privilege.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.